seriously, what's the trouble?
It's my cousin.
Wilma? What's the matter with her?
She has a, well, I guess you'd call it a delusion. You know her uncle, Uncle Ira.
Sure.
Miles, she's got herself thinking he isn't her uncle.
How do you mean, that they're not really related?
No, she thinks he's an imposter or something, someone who only looks like Ira.
Have you seen him?
I just came from there.
Well, is he Uncle Ira or isn't he Uncle Ira?
What if I told you one of the most paranoid films in history was never meant to be political at all? In 1956, Invasion of the Body Snatchers terrified audiences with its vision of a town quietly taken over by perfect soulless duplicates. A nightmare that felt a little too close to real life in Cold War America. Shot fast, cheap, and under studio pressure, it accidentally captured the fear of its entire generation: conformity, control, and the loss of identity. The result became one of the most influential sci-fi thrillers ever made. These are 16 facts about Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the film that started as a B-movie and ended up defining what paranoia on screen really looks like. Number 1. A sci-fi classic shot in just 23 days. Director Don Siegel didn't have money, time, or studio faith on his side. Just grit. The entire movie was filmed in only 23 days, a sprint that would have broken most productions. Every scene had to be blocked, lit, and shot with military precision. There was no luxury for reshoots or retakes. If the camera rolled and no one tripped, it was printed. Siegel's no-nonsense direction turned necessity into style. The fast pacing gave the film a raw, nervous energy that perfectly matched its story of creeping paranoia. You can actually feel the tension of a crew racing the clock to finish before the studio pulled the plug. What started as a low-budget rush job ended up capturing the urgency of Invasion itself. Fast, silent, and unstoppable. Number 2. The alien pods cost less than a new car. Those eerie seed-like pods, the ones that spawned lifeless human duplicates, looked like expensive movie magic. In reality, they were built on a tiny budget of around $30,000 total, crafted from papier-mâché, latex, and creative lighting tricks by production designer Ted Hallworth. Each pod was handmade, filled with gels and foam to pulse under the lights, and doused with fog to hide imperfections. They were fragile, messy, and constantly collapsing under the heat of the studio lamps. The crew often had to rebuild them overnight just to keep filming on schedule. Cheap as they were, those fake pods became iconic. Proof that terror doesn't need money, just imagination. Even today, that moment when the duplicates emerge from their pods remains one of the most haunting images in sci-fi history. Number 3. It was almost called Sleep No More. Before it became Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the film had a very different name, Sleep No More. Director Don Siegel and writer Daniel Mainwaring pushed for that title because it hinted at the story's eerie mix of exhaustion and paranoia. But the studio wanted something flashier, something that would sell tickets in big bold letters on a 1950s marquee. Allied artists overruled the creative team, choosing Invasion of the Body Snatchers instead. Siegel hated it at first, calling it cheap sensationalism. Yet the title worked. Audiences couldn't resist the promise of an alien invasion lurking inside their neighbors. Ironically, the title the studio forced on him became one of the most unforgettable in science fiction history. It's hard to imagine the same fear spreading under the softer name Sleep No More. Number 4. A dark ending. The studio tried to erase. Don Siegel's original ending was brutally bleak. Dr. Miles Bennell screaming helplessly on the highway, warning drivers that humanity was already lost. That was supposed to be the final image, a gut punch of hopelessness that mirrored the paranoia of the era. But the studio panicked. Executives at Allied Artists thought the film was too grim and demanded a new opening and ending to soften the blow. They forced Siegel to add the hospital framing scenes, turning the story into a flashback and giving it a faint glimmer of hope. Siegel always said the studio ruined his perfect ending, but audiences didn't seem to mind. Even with that compromise, Invasion of the Body Snatchers still left viewers shaken, walking out of theaters wondering if anyone around them was truly human. Number 5. Theaters turned their lobbies into alien nurseries. When Invasion of the Body Snatchers hit theaters, studios knew they had something eerie on their hands, and they leaned all the way in. To hype the film, cinemas across America filled their lobbies with life-sized papier-mâché pods, eerie lighting, and cardboard cutouts of the cast frozen in mid-scream. Some exhibitors even hired staff to dress as pod people and silently wander the lobby, creeping out moviegoers before the film even started. It was part marketing stunt, part psychological warfare, and it worked. Crowds lined up, buzzing with rumors that the pods might actually move. It was low-budget promotion at its finest. The kind of practical showmanship that made 1950s sci-fi feel real, even before the lights went down.
You said you saw it there just now. Why did you come here tonight? You had just become aware of a curious, unexplainable epidemic mass hysteria. So your mind started playing tricks, and reality became unreality. I know, Miles, this is all hard to believe, but these things happen.
Number 6. They almost got Orson Welles, or Edward R. Murrow. Before cameras rolled, producer Walter Wanger wanted to add a touch of prestige. His idea? A dramatic prologue, narrated by Orson Welles, or famed broadcaster Edward R. Murrow, introducing the true story of the pod invasion like a chilling news bulletin. It would have blurred the line between fiction and reality, turning the movie into a mock report about humanity's downfall. But director Don Siegel hated the idea. He believed the story should feel discovered, not explained. Adding a narrator, he argued, would break the illusion of paranoia creeping up on the audience. The proposal was scrapped before a single frame was shot. Welles and Murrow never lent their voices, but the film didn't need them. Its fear spoke loudly enough, a nightmare that didn't require anyone to tell you it was real. Number 7. Real nights, real darkness. In the 1950s, most Hollywood night scenes were faked, shot in daylight with filters and tinted film stock. But director Don Siegel refused to cheat. He demanded every nighttime scene in Invasion of the Body Snatchers be shot at night. No shortcuts, no tricks. It was a brutal choice. The crew worked through freezing California nights, battling wind, moisture, and exhaustion. Lighting rigs had to be rebuilt constantly, and the film's small budget didn't allow for extra setups or overtime. Still, Siegel believed real shadows created real fear. The gamble paid off. Those deep, grainy nighttime shots gave the movie its haunting realism, a world that looked like yours, just darker, emptier, and one step away from being replaced.
Miles, where do they come from?
I don't know. If they are seeds or seed pods, they must grow someplace on a plant, probably. And somebody or something wants this duplication to take place.
But when they're finished, what happens to our bodies?
I don't know. When the process is completed, probably the original is destroyed or disintegrates. No, wait!
Pretty wild so far, right? And we're only halfway through. From Orson Welles' rejected narration to all-night shoots that nearly broke the crew, Invasion of the Body Snatchers was already becoming more unsettling behind the camera than on screen. But the real paranoia is just beginning. Studio clashes, political whispers, and the eerie coincidences that made this film feel like a mirror of its own time. If you're enjoying this deep dive, don't forget to subscribe and hype this video. It helps more movie fans discover these strange, forgotten stories from Hollywood's golden age. Let's keep going. Number 8. Phone lines, dead, on and off screen. In the movie, one of the first signs that something is terribly wrong in Santa Mira is when no one can reach the outside world. The phone lines are suddenly dead, cutting the town off completely. It was a perfect symbol of isolation and paranoia. But ironically, the real production faced the same problem. The film was shot partly in the quiet hills of Sierra Madre, California, where communication lines were unreliable. Crew members struggled to coordinate with the studio, often working long hours without phone contact or even radio clarity. That eerie overlap, a story about a town cut off from humanity, filmed in a location that literally lost touch with the world, added a layer of unintended realism. On and off screen, Santa Mira was truly alone.
Is Dr. Bennell there?
Yes, I'll get him.
Never mind. Just tell him the Sacramento circuits are still busy and ask him if he wants me to keep trying.
All right, hold on. Miles, the circuits are still busy.
Well, tell her to keep trying. Also try San Francisco and Washington.
Number 9. A 23-day schedule that still ran long. Don Siegel prided himself on efficiency, but even with his tight 23-day plan, Invasion of the Body Snatchers ran 3 days over schedule. The reason? Endless night shoots and unpredictable weather in the hills of Sierra Madre. Equipment froze, fog rolled in, and actors were often shooting until dawn just to capture a few usable takes. Allied artists started to panic as costs climbed, but Siegel pushed through, refusing to compromise the film's eerie realism. "You can't fake fear," he said, and he meant it. The exhaustion on the actors' faces in those late-night scenes wasn't acting, it was survival. In the end, the overrun barely dented the budget, but it gave the film its most haunting atmosphere, a world that feels like it's falling apart in slow motion.
You didn't go to sleep.
So tired.
They weren't people. It was more of them. They're growing thousands of pods in greenhouses. We've got to get away.
Number 10. Critics slept on it until decades later. When Invasion of the Body Snatchers premiered in 1956, most critics shrugged it off. The film was released as part of a double feature, often paired with lighter B-movies, and reviewers dismissed it as just another alien flick in a crowded sci-fi market. Even Allied artists treated it like filler content rather than a prestige picture. But over time, that quiet release became part of its legend. Audiences kept talking about the movie, its eerie realism, its suffocating tension, its ending that hit too close to home. By the 1970s, film scholars were calling it one of the defining works of Cold War cinema, and new directors like George Lucas and Ridley Scott cited it as a major influence. The critics may have missed it at first, but the pod people didn't stay buried. They crept back, quietly, until the world finally caught up. Number 11. The hidden message beneath the horror. When Invasion of the Body Snatchers first came out, audiences couldn't stop arguing about what it really meant. Was it an anti-communist warning about losing individuality to a collective hive mind, or a critique of McCarthyism, showing how fear turns people into identical, obedient shells? Even author Jack Finney, who wrote the original story, denied any political intent. He claimed it was simply about people losing their humanity, not about Washington or ideology. But director Don Siegel wasn't so sure. He later admitted that every viewer saw their own fears reflected in it, and that's what made it powerful. The truth is, no one can fully agree, and that's the genius of it. Whether you see it as politics, paranoia, or pure nightmare, Body Snatchers holds up a mirror that still feels uncomfortably real. Number 12. Too serious for its own studio. Allied artists didn't know what to do with Invasion of the Body Snatchers. When the executives saw Don Siegel's first cut, they panicked. It was too bleak, too quiet, too real. They wanted a crowd-pleasing alien spectacle, not a psychological nightmare about identity and fear. So, they stepped in. They demanded narration, the hospital framing story, and even suggested new dialogue to make it clearer for audiences. Siegel fought back, arguing that ambiguity was the point, that the horror came from not knowing if the invasion could be stopped. The studio won that battle, but not the war. Even with their added optimism, the movie's tone stayed chillingly hopeless. What Allied artists feared would confuse audiences instead made history, a B movie that thought too deeply and scared too smart.
Danger! Go on, get out of here! You're endangered! Please! Get out of here! Go on, get out of here! Get out of here!
Number 13. Santa Mira was just Los Angeles in disguise. The sleepy California town of Santa Mira, where neighbors smile by day and turn soulless by night, doesn't actually exist. The film's eerie small-town backdrop was stitched together from real locations in Sierra Madre and Los Angeles backlots, cleverly disguised to feel like one cohesive place. Storefronts were redressed overnight, fake street signs were bolted to lampposts, and the same few blocks were shot from multiple angles to make the town seem larger. Even the winding highway where Dr. Bonnell screams, "You're next!" was filmed on a road just outside Los Angeles. That mix of real and artificial gave Santa Mira its uncanny feel. Familiar, but slightly wrong. It looked like the world you knew, just hollowed out, the perfect home for pod people. Number 14. The real horror. No emotion at all. Forget lasers and monsters. The terror in Invasion of the Body Snatchers came from something far simpler, a lack of emotion. The pod people were perfect physical replicas, but inside they were empty. No love, no anger, no guilt, just calm efficiency. That idea terrified 1950s audiences because it mirrored real life. Post-war America was obsessed with fitting in. Same jobs, same houses, same smiles. The film hit a nerve by showing what happens when individuality disappears completely. You're still you, but you don't feel anything anymore. It was a horror so subtle that it didn't need blood or violence, just a quiet stare, a familiar face, suddenly void of soul. And that emptiness, more than any alien, is what still chills audiences today. Number 15. Pod people enters the dictionary. Invasion of the Body Snatchers didn't just change sci-fi, it changed the language. After the film's release, the term pod people slipped into everyday conversation, used to describe anyone who seemed emotionless, robotic, or blindly conformist. By the 1960s, journalists were calling politicians pod people, and critics used it to mock the growing uniformity of suburbia. It's one of the rare moments when a B-movie idea became part of cultural DNA. Even today, the phrase shows up in politics, memes, and late-night talk shows, shorthand for losing your humanity in a world that demands sameness. The irony? A cheap movie made in less than a month created a metaphor that's lasted nearly 70 years. And that's one invasion we never escape. Number 16. From B-movie to Hall of Fame. What began as a modest studio thriller ended up immortalized among the greats. In 1994, Invasion of the Body Snatchers was officially added to the U.S. National Film Registry, recognized as culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. It now sits beside films like Citizen Kane and Casablanca. Not bad for a movie once dismissed as drive-in filler. The honors didn't stop there. The American Film Institute later ranked it among the top 10 sci-fi thrillers of all time, and its influence can be seen in everything from Alien to Get Out. Directors, critics, and fans still cite it as one of the purest examples of cinematic paranoia ever made. It's the ultimate twist ending. A movie about emotionless conformity became one of the most distinctive and enduring films in Hollywood history. For a film made on a shoestring and dismissed as pulp, Invasion of the Body Snatchers became one of cinema's greatest accidents. A movie that defined paranoia without ever meaning to. Beneath its low-budget sets and papier-mâché pods was a reflection of everything America was afraid to admit. The fear of blending in, of losing yourself, of waking up one morning and realizing the world no longer feels human. It wasn't the loudest or flashiest sci-fi of its time, it was the quietest. That's why it still gets under your skin. It doesn't scream, it whispers. They're already here. So, which fact surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and hype this video to help more classic film fans discover the stories hiding behind Hollywood's most haunting nightmares.